Hi, I'm Kimberly. Welcome back to the Success Series Talks. Talks designed to help you get what you want out of life. Remember to listen, take notes, and most importantly, act. So I would say that I've had an epiphany, but that's not completely accurate. I have slowly been learning a whole bunch of things over a period of time, and I finally put the pieces together and had my moment of realization. I find happiness to be a very interesting thing. We have a lot of things that we say make us happy, and there are things that seem to make it more difficult. If I have a cold, I am certainly not bouncing around the same way I do when a friend comes to visit. One of those situations makes it slightly easier to be happy, right? Now, I do believe that we can be happy overall, even if we're not happy with every little detail of our lives. Happiness is a choice in at least two ways, I think. Number one, happiness is a state of mind. What we choose to focus on, blessings versus things that go wrong, will determine some part of our happiness. Number two, the decisions we specifically make that become our circumstances will determine to some degree our level of happiness. So in life, we tend to gamble a lot. Has anyone ever thought that? Now maybe you're thinking, no, I don't gamble at all, but let me go with me on this for a minute. So I take a gamble every time I hop in my car that I won't die in a car wreck. However, usually I don't even think about it. And in my mind, the reason I'm hopping in my car usually seems to have greater rewards than the risk. For example, the risk of getting in a wreck is overshadowed by going to work. So I risk my life for my job. We take other risks too. If someone buys a house, they seem to think that that will be a good risk, even though they could lose their job the next day. And then how would they pay for that house? But somewhere, the risk is worth it. Now, what I find interesting is that we gamble with a lot of things in life, but when it comes to our happiness, we actually hold back. We find it to be too risky to really go after what we want. We're not willing to leave the roommates we struggle with because the idea of trying to start a contract is too much. Or we're not willing to quit our job because what if we don't find another one for a while? Or we won't leave the bad relationship because we're scared of being alone. Why do we not find that happiness is worth the risk? Are we so afraid of what will happen or could happen that we settle because settling is at least comfortable? We know it won't bring us happiness, but perhaps it'll bring us less stress than what could happen if the worst case scenario happened. The interesting thing is, I want you to think back over your life after this talk is all done. And I want you to write down all the times that the absolute worst case scenario happened. Any experiences you can think of that turned out to be the worst possible situation, write it down on a piece of paper. My guess is you won't have very many of them. So basing your decisions off of that is not wise nor accurate. I know people who have absolutely hated their job, but they will not quit and find another one. They may be able to find one that pays more or that they like more, but they won't try it. So they go to work day after day completely miserable. Meanwhile, every other part of their life gets worse too. Their relationships, their health, etc. Because they're miserable, they're making everything else miserable. They force their bodies to leave their bed and drag themselves to work. Sometimes they need a little training or a certificate to get that dream job, but they won't go back to school and there's always an excuse. Perhaps it's because they haven't been forever or they have bills and they don't want to risk it in case they fail. Why is it that being miserable is easier than the unknown? I've also known people who married someone, not because they were madly in love, but because they feared being alone and never finding someone. Now, I think the people who have done this at least love the person to some degree, but I wonder if they ever wish they hadn't. They could have waited and married someone who would really be good for them. Wouldn't the gamble of just waiting in order to be really happy have been worth the temporary current discomfort? I guess everyone has to answer that for themselves. My mom used to say, don't give up what you want most for what you want right now. So I have a friend who was engaged 3 times, and one of these engagements, she broke off at the wedding. So everyone was sure that she just couldn't commit and was having issues, and so everyone would give her advice and tell her to just buckle down. However, what happened is she would date them. Sometimes she would get caught up when they were moving fast, and then she would agree to marry them, and then over the next few months realize they really were not what she was looking for at all. Or she just couldn't shake that feeling that something wasn't quite right, but her family loved the guy, and so she would stay in it until finally she realized that she had to call it off because her happiness was more important than what her family or friends thought. In this process, she eventually found a great guy that she married. She didn't have a fear of commitment or of marriage. She just had a fear of committing to the wrong person and being unhappy. She wanted to be happy. And guess what? She is. There is nothing wrong with wanting to be happy. I am a huge believer that life can have a happy ending, and it's worth the risk to get there. We are that we might have joy. There may be multiple reasons why we do or do not do something, but here are two fairly common ones. Number one, society shapes us. For example, they say it's not good to quit one job without another. Do you know how many jobs want someone to start immediately and will not wait for you to give a 2 weeks notice? So, I guess that means you're just going to be stuck, right? There's no choice. You have to keep going to the same horrible job day after day. No! Let's be serious here. Go out on a limb. Maybe a different option would be to save up some money so you have some for a couple of months, and then go ahead and take that plunge, quit your job, and start applying for other ones that you do want. Seriously, I give you permission to do something crazy like that. Number two, we fear what others think. I think this is true for just about every person on this earth. We worry about what someone else is going to think of us. I don't know why. I don't know why it matters. Unless they have the exact life we want really, really badly and we could get it by following them, I don't see why we should even care what they think. But one day I realized that I do this very thing. I very seldom stress over my actual decisions. Sometimes I look a little flighty and people wonder, what I'm doing. And someone once asked me if I was just afraid of making a wrong one, and that was why I kept changing my mind and switching around my circumstances and changing jobs. I thought about that, and that was not my problem. I decided that I was afraid everyone would think that the decision was wrong or that I was just being, uncommitted or whatever. And when really I was just trying to make the decision that would be the best fit and would make me the most happy and that I could commit to for a long time. You see, if I hate something, I won't stay with it. I refuse to be miserable. And this is really odd to the rest of the world, but as a result, I am happy, and I look forward to waking up each day knowing that nothing can hold me back. Nothing can force me into doing something I don't like. Now, this is highly looked down upon in society, by the way. I used to think that God told me things 6 months in advance because it took me that long to make a decision. I thought about the last couple of years, and what really happens is I get an idea or direction that I think about anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks, and then I make a decision, and basically I stick to it for the next 4.5 months. And then I just stress over how everyone else will react to my decision and try to get encouraged to carry through with it, and then I finally do it, and then I feel great when I'm done. Okay, this fear becomes very paralyzing, and it is difficult and draining. I imagine that I'm not the only person who does this. So what if it looks like you're a commitment phobe? Just because everyone else doesn't have the courage to keep trying until they get what they really want doesn't mean you have to settle with them. Nor does it mean that something is wrong with you. Don't let anyone convince you that there is. I've learned I don't have to follow the expectations of society. I don't have to work for the same company my entire life. I can have 30 different careers in my lifetime, and it's okay. I can become an entrepreneur, and it may take a few years, but that is okay too. And in the process, I may look like my life isn't put together, but that doesn't matter. The same is true for you. The reason why this is a problem to so many people around you, why people make you feel like there's something wrong with you if you don't follow, is because this kind of thinking is how 95% of people think. That you can't just switch these things up. You can't just go get a new job. You can't just go back to school when you're 50. You can't just become an entrepreneur. You need to settle down and do all this stuff and do it the way you're supposed to and just be secure. Okay, that's 95% thinking. I would suggest that this is one time you don't want to be a sheep. The majority can be wrong. Figure out what is right for you and follow that path instead. Make your mistakes and get your own rewards. Don't just stick to the same path of your friends or family members. Forge your own path. Make decisions that you can live with and be happy with. Because in the end, it is worth the gamble, and you are the only one that has to live with every decision you make. So my challenge? Take a gamble and see what happens. Miracles happen every day, but sometimes we have to put ourselves in a position for them to take place. Thanks for listening, and make it a great day. Remember to subscribe to my channel so you can listen to other great talks. Also, give it a like and share it with others that you think may benefit.